Hey, welcome to Parker's Reefs. In today's episode, we're going to go over exactly how much the idiot-proof reef tankers cost and run through each of the purchases so you can work out what it would cost you to replicate this setup. Alright, so I guess the idiot-proof reef tank has set out to, it's accomplished what it set out to prove, and that's that you can have a stunning reef tank without all of the automations and keeping things as simple as possible. And everyone that's come over to my house that's came to get frags out of my main display or just to visit has seen this tank and fallen in love with it. And straight after asking if it's really that easy to keep a reef tank, the next question is, how much did that cost you? So I figured rather than telling each person individually that comes over and sees it, I'd put together a video that goes through all of the purchases we've made on this tank, go over some that I think are absolutely mandatory and some that are optional, so you can see what it costs to replicate a scenario like this. So let's get into it.
All right, so here we are. I'm sitting down at my computer and I've built a spreadsheet which you can see on screen here. And I just thought I'd run through all of the things that I've added to the idiot-proof reef tank, whether they be optional items or must-have items. I've listed the type of item they are and also, the what it is and then the type that I picked, as well as what the average sort of price is. Now, before I get grilled for this, guys, you may find that things cost more than that. You may find that things cost less than that. That's just the price I've put down. I've done my best to make this as accurate as possible. The other thing I can point out is if you're buying everything from the same shop and you're working with them and you're not trying to price compare them with everyone and screw your local fish shop down for the last dollar, they will look after you. Believe it or not, you don't have to bust their balls for them to give you a good deal. Look after them, they'll look after you. So my personal recommendation, find a local fish shop that's either near to you or even if it's not near you, that they're good to you, that they give you good advice, they give you good quality items, and they give you a good price as well. The advice being the key thing, right? You cannot buy advice for the dollars we're talking. So if something costs you a couple dollars more at your shop that gives you good advice and they're going to help you set it up, that is worth its weight in gold, guys. Anyway, enough of a absolute pressure tactic to not jump online and buy all these things for 60 cents cheaper here and there. Let's get into the actual items themselves. So obviously we've got our must-haves, and the first item in that must-have list is the tank itself. Now, in this instance, I went a Waterbox Cube 20, and that was 330 Australian dollars. Now, full disclosure, I love Waterbox tanks. They're very, very nice. The glass is high quality. The silicone joins are very discreet. The back section is quite functional. However, it does not have to be a Waterbox 20. You can make almost any glass box of water work in this instance. So that gives you a ballpark of what to sort of budget for a tank this size. If you wanted to replicate the idiot-proof reef tank to a T, I used the Waterbox 20 and it was $330. So have a look what your local fish shop has and go from there. Now, next up, another highly contentious item, but the lights. This channel is sponsored by Kessel, the Australian distributor of Kessel. There's a couple of reasons for that. Arj is just an awesome guy. I also do love Kessel lights. But thirdly, the Kessel A80 was a really, really good choice for this tank. It's silent. It has absolutely no fan at all. It is not overpowering. You're not going to bleach corals by giving them too much light. If anything, I was personally a little bit concerned that the A80 was a bit weak, and I have been so pleasantly surprised to see SBS growing and healing over where I'd cut it. So my fears of the A80 not being strong enough have completely washed away. It's just a really simple light. You pick what color you want, you give it maximum intensity because it is a pretty low powered light, and off you go. And at $300, whilst it's not the cheapest option out there, it's a very, very sexy bit of gear. So $300 for the Kessel A80 and the mount, good option in my money. Okay, next up we had the sand. Now I went for the Aquarium Systems Paleo sand in a 5 kilo bag. Few reasons for that. Again, Addicted to Fish is the Australian distributor. They're a sponsor of this channel. So I like to support the people that support me. That being said, this sand, there wasn't a lot of options for sand on the market when I was putting together the idiot-proof reef tank. Sand's one of those things. I mean, the paleo sand was very nice and white, very clear. I do feel like it helps the underpowered light a little bit by reflecting a bit of that light back up. Sand is sand. It's $35. I have put it in the must-haves. I should point out you don't have to run sand. Personally, I wouldn't run a reef tank without sand. I can't imagine them without sand, but people run bare bottom tanks. So if you wanted to save yourself $35, go for it, guys. Don't run sand or run some other sand. I should point out, though, that it is actually illegal to take sand from your beach, and you do not want to take it because it's very, very fine, and it could also have any sort of pollutants in there. So don't take sand from the beach. You can take salt water, but not the sand. All right. Next up is the heater. Now, this is one little item that I almost forgot about when I was putting together this list because it's just done its job in the back section there, and that's the Aqua EL Ultra 75 watt unit. Now, I've had a look around the prices. I only paid $50 for this unit. It seems like I got a pretty good deal there, maybe about $60 or even $70. Maybe you have to budget a little bit more there. This is a nifty little unit, so slimline, non-breakable. It's just going to hide in that back section. It's got the digital thermostat on there, shows you what the temperature is and what the temperature is set to. Great little heater. I wouldn't recommend anything else for this tank. Just an absolute ripper. Okay, rock. Now, this is a space where this isn't the must-haves because you kind of can't have a reef tank without some rock. However, you could do this a few different ways. I know for beginners getting into reef aquariums, that live rock or artificial rock is something that you just don't budget that much money for. When you look at this piece of rock, you would not expect it to be somewhere between $100 and $200. It just doesn't happen like that. News flash, it does happen like that, whether it be real rock, artificial rock, whatever it is, it's going to cost you that much. That's just the way these things are. It's just a piece that's often overlooked in the budget of your reef tank. So realistically, I got a ridiculously good deal on this. Again, my local fish shop really looked after me here. It may have only been $120 worth of rock and epoxy, but he did put a lot of his time in there. You can, of course, make that yourself, and you'll probably pay about the same, probably about $100 worth of rock and some glue, and you can make your own sculpture. Having my local fish shop build that for me, oh man, I couldn't be happier. It did such a good job, and it's a really cool scape. Really maximizes the shape of the water box, allows for lots of spaces to mount coral, lots of flow through, so I haven't had to add a wave maker. Just a really cool little setup. So $120 on rock, probably on the light end. You probably want to budget somewhere between $100 and $200 on your live rock or artificial rock. All right, next up was the return pump. Now, in this, I went the Sicce Synchro Silent 1.0. Full disclosure, there wasn't a lot of options for something small, for the right sort of flow that I wanted on this tank. You could probably run the 0.5 if you were going to run a wave maker. I went the 1.0 just to create a little bit of extra flow through the tank so I could try and avoid a wave maker. That's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, but you know, that's so be it. And that was $60. Sicce, great quality pumps. I would probably run one again, but you know, there's other options out there. If you found a little Tunzi or you found a Eheim or whatever it may be, by all means, you don't have to run the Sicce, but you are going to need to budget somewhere between $50 to $100 for a return pump. The more you spend, probably the quieter that pump's going to be. Okay, the next item now. Reef tanks don't happen without water. Now, on the Idiot Proof Reef Tank, we decided to go for natural salt water. By all means, you can run artificial salt water if you want to. You're probably going to need to budget a little bit more because, believe it or not, when you have to mix it yourself, it does actually cost more because you still need RO water, which you're either going to have to buy or you're going to have to buy an RO unit. And then you got to buy the salt and you got to mix it up. Or you can buy natural salt water, or the other option is you can collect your own natural salt water. If you live somewhere near the beach, you are entitled, you're allowed to go to the ocean, take water from the ocean, and take it home with you. Full disclosure, it can be a little bit tricky. It sounds super easy, but getting the right salinity, getting the right collection point, and also just the effort, the amount of work it takes to collect nice, clean salt water is not as easy as it sounds. So in this instance, I went to my local fish shop, and these are next two rows kind of tie in together because my local fish shop sells drums full of salt water. They're $10 for a 25-litre drum that comes full of water, whether it be salt water or RO, and then it's $5 to refill each time. So I have split them up in case your local fish shop does not do that, or you want to supply your own drums. You can take that $50 off, or whatever it may be. I've split it up. I've put down salt water and RO water. So we've got 250 litres of water, probably You probably want to go 150 litres of salt and 100 litres of RO. Obviously, this is something you're going to need to buy continuing on, because you're going to go through about 25 litres of salt water in a week, and probably, depending on how much surface agitation and stuff, you're probably going to go through about 10 litres of RO a week. So this is something you're going to need to budget in, and unless you already have drums kicking about, you're going to need something to hold that water when it's not in your tank. So also budget some money for some drums to hold that water. So I've put down $50 for each, because that's just what I've put down. Check the prices at your local fish store, or if you want to go artificial salt water, but this is a part of the spreadsheet you probably want to tweak to suit whichever style you go. Okay, next up, biomedia. Now, I've put this in the must-haves. I was on the verge of putting this in optional. It's absolutely not 100% necessary, but then I do honestly feel that for the success of this tank, more surface area was really important, and I added these biospheres in very, very early. The only saving grace is if you can find a local fish shop, but I know places like Uni Hill Aquarium in Melbourne, big shout out to Joey at Uni Hill Aquarium, sell the spheres individually. You can buy these ball by ball, which is really, really cool. And from memory, I must admit it's been a little while since I've been at Joey's shop. I had a feeling they were about $2 each. I used 10 in the idiot-proof reef tanks, so I put down $20. Now, full disclosure, if your local fish shop is like the 99% of local fish shops out there that do not sell them individually, you're going to need to buy a box of media, and you can hopefully you can find someone else setting up a tank, and you can split the box between 2 or 3 or 4 of you. The boxes run at about $80, $100, something like that each. So if you don't have anyone else to share that with, and you decide you do have to do it, you can have extra media. It's going to cost you more than $20. Again, sorry, don't flame me for it. I spent $20 on biomedia. That's what this cost me on the tank. Find your own way to do that if you want to. It could be considered optional. Anyway, enough on the biomedia. Let's move on. Okay. Next up was the ATO. I'll just scroll this down a bit, give a little bit of a giveaway on the next items. ATO, the Ripple Nano ATO has been absolutely awesome. Apart from that little hiccup I had when I first got the unit, and the team at Ripple were fantastic. Replaced the pump without question. In fact, they walked me through a couple of troubleshooting measures, and as soon as we had diagnosed that the pump itself was faulty, they sent me another one, and it was here in 2 days. Just incredible. That cost me $100. I got it on a discounted offer. They are normally $110. Budget $110 if you need to. Keep an eye on some of the Facebook pages though, because Ripple do often have little sales where you can save 10 or even $20. So I'll put down $100 for that. Now, next one, cycle bacteria. I put this in the must-haves. You don't have to have it necessarily. You can go the natural cycle, put a bit of fish food in your tank, even a little bit of raw prawn in there for a couple of days, take it out and leave it for as long as you want. If you want to do that, it will save you $40 instantly, no problem. In many ways, I'd probably recommend that, but if this is a genuine idiot-proof reef tank and you've never had a reef tank before, it's going to be pretty difficult to leave the tank empty for a couple of months. So if you're wanting to speed that up, I'd still recommend you leave it for a month. But if you're wanting to speed that up and you're willing to spend $40 on some bacteria in a bottle to help that cycle along, then the aquarium system Start Your Tank's a nifty little a little program. Comes with vials that are labeled for each day. You simply tip them in. It'll add the ammonia, then it'll add the bacteria. It'll top up the bacteria, and it will help cycle your tank a fair bit quicker. Does not mean you won't have an ugly tank. If you remember, in the idiot-proof reef tank, I had this wicked ugly phase, particularly with the artificial rock. There's so much silica in that rock, and with new sand and everything, you're still going to have an ugly phase. So you've got to get past that. That's just the way things go. But if you wanted to speed your cycle along, budget about $40. Whether you go Aquarium Systems or Dr. Tim's or whatever other options you go for, that's what you're going to be looking at. Okay, next up, maintenance bacteria. Now, another one that's possibly on the optional side. Personally, I feel like that's been a very big contributing factor to the success of this tank, is continually adding bacteria in there just to keep it as stable as possible, particularly when I added the fish and also the heap of coral. Full disclosure, I have done some work with the Reef Revolution team. Does not take away the fact that I fully stand behind this product. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's got nitrifying and denitrifying bacteria in there. It's $50 to $55, somewhere around there. I would highly recommend it. Simple as that. You don't have to run it if you don't want to, but I just found like it really made this idiot-proof reef tank much, much more stable. All right, now next, fish. I mean, I guess technically this is probably optional, but the whole idea of an idiot-proof reef tank was to have a couple of baby clowns in there, and 2 captive-bred Occy clownfish cost me $60. This is an area, if you wanted to, I mean, you could go Wyoming whites or I don't know, some sort of lightning clowns, whatever it is. You could easily spend $1,000 here if you wanted to. But I just went 2 basic Ocellaris captive bred clowns, cost me $60 for the pair. Happy days. Now, next up in the must-haves column, and this is one that is absolutely must-haves. You have to have a cleanup crew. Thankfully, it's a pretty small tank, so we don't need a lot. And also, the snails are very, very good at breeding, particularly turbo snails. Even Trocus will breed themselves quite well in a tank. So I've only added to this tank 1 Trocus, 1 Strombus, and 4 turbo snails. Now, I do have more than that in there now. Whether they've hitchhiked in on corals, whether they've bred, whatever it is, I would say I've probably got about 50 turbo snails in there. Now, I still only got 1 Strombus and 1 Trocus, but in a tank that size, they're doing a fantastic job. Now, that little pack of cleanup crew to get this tank going cost me $30 from my local fish shop. Well worth it. It's probably a pretty good price. I know Strombus normally cost a little bit more, maybe about $15, $20. Trocus can be maybe about $10, and turbos are normally about $2 each. So probably budget somewhere up to $50 on your cleanup crew. May get it less, you may get it for 30 if you're lucky. Okay, fish food. Now, you got to have fish food. You can take your pick. I'm not going to recommend one brand over the other, because as soon as I recommend one brand, I'm going to get flamed for it. Whether you go pallets, whether you go frozen, whatever it is, take your pick. Budget about $25. Get some fish food. You can spend a lot more, obviously. Bear in mind, though, that you really do not need to feed, particularly if you've only got 2 baby clownfish. You really do not need to feed much. So save yourself some money, and also, well, save yourself some money on the fish food, but also save yourself some money on water changes and bacteria and solutions and things to pull all that waste out of the tank from overfeeding. Go very, very light on the feeding. All right, next up is Misc, because I knew that people would easily point out things that I haven't covered here. So I put a little miscellaneous column in here. Things like a power board, because if you're running a light, a return pump, a heater, a ATO, any other power device, you're going to need a few plugs at the tank. More often than not, you're not going to have that many outlets wherever you want to put the tank. So you're going to need a power board. You're going to need some glue to stick your corals in, maybe do some running repairs to your escape like I did. And you're also going to need some water tests, whether you pay your local fish shop to get those water tests done, or you buy some water test kits yourself and do it. I've put down $80 in this section just to sort of, well, full disclosure, it balanced out that total really nicely to a round figure. But it's probably a reasonable amount to budget. Spend, $10 on a power board. Another 10, 15 on some glue, and then $50, something like that, $60 on some water tests. Seems a reasonable amount. So from my listing of the must-have items, you can see our total here has come in at $1,400. Personally, I think that's quite cheap to get a beautiful looking reef tank set up and running. Some people may die in shock of that price. Totally fine, that's okay. The whole point of this video is to show what a tank like the Idiot Proof Reef tank costs to set up, and also to maintain, really. Once it's up and running, we're not going to go through too much other than a bit of fish food, bit of water, and a tiny bit of power, but you need to be comfortable with the amount of money the reef tanks cost, and a little tank like this easily can cost $1,400. I mean, we could easily go up to $2-3 grand there without blinking too much of an eyelid. So get comfortable with that figure before you start. Otherwise, you're going to leave the hobby real quick. If you don't have those kind of dollars to spend, or you're going to try and do it on the cheap, you are going to be constantly chasing your tail, I feel anyway. There are some things you can do to make it cheaper, but they do all come with compromises. Okay, let's get on to some of the optional things that I have done to this tank. You don't have to do them, but it's only fair that I list them in this so you get an idea of what those optional things cost. So if we scroll down here, we've got the lid. Now this is a DIY lid I made myself. Well, I say I made myself. I had the local plastic place to make it. Then I fit it in. I gave them the measurements. They cut it out for me. I got some mesh from my local fish shop and some caravan spline. I put it together. It cost me $50 to make. Happy days. Personally, I feel so much more comfortable with this tank with the lid on it, but I understand not everyone likes the lid. Some people like that clean, open top aquarium. Save yourself $50. Happy days. Next up, Skimmer. This is totally optional. Whilst I really like the Tunzi 9001, it's absolutely not necessary in this tank. If you want to just keep your water changes up, you'll keep the parameters in this tank just fine. It's not necessary at all, but it does help pull out a bit of that extra waste, takes a little bit of pressure off your water changes, and it does also help keep the water nice and oxygenated. So if you have the budget, I'd highly recommend it. And also if you can track one down, because the Tunzi 9001s have been a fair bit of shortage in Australia. I know there are a few floating about now. A big Tunzi order did just come into Australia, so get in touch with your local fish shop if you are chasing one. Hopefully they can track one down for you. Okay, next up is the glass cleaner. I have put this in optional because I know on a tank this size, people are often happy to just get their hand in there with a sponge that they just have for their aquarium. Please don't use a kitchen sponge or anything like that. You're going to get oils and fats and detergents and stuff in your tank. Don't do it. If you absolutely insist on doing it by hand with a sponge, make sure you've got some aquarium-only sponges. Personally, the Flipper Nano, beautiful little design. It cost me $50. Super easy. It's got the soft pad on one side and the blade on the other side. It's a very nice slimline, hides in this tank perfectly. $50 well spent in my opinion. Okay, next up is the media chamber. Now, I've put this on optional because it is absolutely optional. Bear in mind though, if you don't go the media chamber, you're probably going to need to budget a couple of replacement socks, because you can only wash the filter sock that comes with the water box so many times before it starts getting a bit, a bit cruddy. The media chamber, you can do it yourself. You can buy one from in-tank accessories, however you like. You can get a big pad of the filter wool for like pennies, if not a couple of bucks. I put down $50 for that. I think it cost me about $40 to make, and then $10 for filter wool. Happy days. Of course, you can put media in there as well. Absolutely not necessary. If you want to add media, you're going to need to add that cost in as well. And then last but not least, corals. Obviously, you can name your price on corals here. If you wanted to spend about $50 on corals, you absolutely could. You could get probably get a nice basic color hammer and some xenia and some leathers for $50 from someone, or even from your local fish shop, and you'd have a pretty highly stocked tank. Or on the flip side, you could buy a few home wreckers and Walt Disney acro frags and easily drop $4 or $5 grand and have a few colored sticks in your tank. Obviously, they're two fairly extremes. I went a combination of getting a couple of swapping a couple of corals with friends, taking some corals out of other tanks, buying some from my local fish shop. I've put down $200 here. Obviously, you can spend however much you want there, but that did bring my optionals up to $600, which if you're quick at maths, you'll see that we've got $1,400 worth of must-haves, $600 worth of optionals, gives us a grand total of $2,000. Now, obviously, I've tweaked things a little bit here to make that a beautiful round figure, but it does give you a really good idea of what a ballpark of a tank like this is going to cost to set up, and you need to factor a little bit in maintenance. Obviously, a tank this size is not going to cost all that much in maintenance. You're going to want to spend about $5 a week on water, budget $10 a week on water. That'll make sure you've got more than enough salt water and RO, a couple of bucks on food, and your power bill is going to go up, a few dollars as well. It's not a big tank, it's not drawing heaps of power, but you got to factor it in if you don't have a lot of wiggle room. So $2,000. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think the Idiot Proof Reef Tank has been worth that cost? What would you add? What would you take away? What would you argue the price on? Let me know, pop your comments in the section down below. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And as always, if you have not yet, please consider subscribing. I don't think there's that much more we need to do to the Idiot Proof Reef tank, but I'll be sure to keep putting some videos together on this tank because it looks absolutely killer. And I'm sure a lot of you are interested in the progress on it. So I'll keep the videos coming. I'll add them to this playlist so you won't miss them. But if you're subscribed, you'll get a notification when these videos are released. Till next time, guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe and keep reefing.